thank you for inviting me to come up here, and as somebody at a meeting said the other day, we listen to you bang on about the third sector, don't we? And I thought it was really interesting, bang on. In the same way as I think what Joe just said about this idea that we talk about demand, it's really aggressive language. And I suppose I wanted to start with that idea of banging on, because I'm here to bang on about the third sector, so just get used to it. Aggressive response. Jackie said something, Jackie said a lot of things, but Jackie said something that really tapped in for something for me. And at the very beginning, she opened with who she is and what her job title is, so to speak. And her job title was someone with lived experience. The third sector is packed full of lived experience. And I think sometimes, often, we ignore that in view of academics. Is there any academics in the room? I love you. But newsflash, you're not the bee's knees and end all of the world, but I do love you. I think lived experience is also undervalued when we think about professions as well. As many people know who know me, I am somebody with lived experience. I am a survivor of child or sexual abuse. I have mental health issues. I'm also a qualified professional. I'm a psychotherapist. I'm semi-academic. I have all of those traits and others. And when I'm sat around a table, when I'm speaking to people, when I'm honoured enough to be at various different parliamentary groups or forums or strategic meetings, or sat in a therapy room with a client, because I still have a clinical day. It's so important to me, because that's the thing. My lived experience is the thing that got me to be a therapist in the first place, and I never want to not be a therapist. But whenever I'm sat in any of those seats, I bring all of myself. I bring all of my experiences to the table or to the chair. And when I was looking through originally at 5 Year Forward, I was really pleased to see that the voluntary sector was mentioned. Okay, admittedly about 3 times, but it was mentioned. But only about 3 times. I constantly bang on about the third sector. I constantly bang on about the fact that the third sector might be called the third sector, but with the first point of call often. And I was looking at the exec summary this morning, sat in Greg's, eating a bacon butter and drinking a white coffee. And one of the things in the exec summary says, the NHS will become a better partner with voluntary organisations and local communities. How? How are you going to be a better partner? I see what we're going to do a lot, but I still haven't heard yet how we're going to do it. And for those voluntary sector or voluntary community and social enterprise, which I'm trying to get people to think more of, so the VCSE sector, to include everybody, which also includes faith organisations as well. For those of you in the room that are representing those organisations, how are you going to engage the NHS? I was at a conference the other week, through the PPN around IAPT, and I got up and I banged on about the third sector and IAPT and talked about the fact that actually we've created something about a them and us. IAPT is the NHS, and that's the really rubbish stuff. The real counselling happens in the third sector when we have lots of time. Absolute bollocks. We have to work together. This is a mental health, I believe we're in a mental health crisis in this country. And we're only going to deal with it if we pull together. And in the words of David Cameron, which is something I never thought I'd ever say, privately or publicly, I think we need to be in this together, really in this together, to deal with this issue together. I think there's something really important about recognising patient choice. I don't just mean the formal patient choice, which I only learnt about at the IAPT conference. I'd never heard of the formal patient choice before. I'll take 50% of responsibility for that I haven't gone off and found out about it. But I also think there's a 50% responsibility that the NHS and commissioners haven't even told me about it. I can only know what I know. I can't know what I don't know. I think there's something about recognising what is embedded within the voluntary community and social enterprise sector. And often what's embedded in it is a wealth of experience, lived experience, but also a whole load of ex-NHS staff. We're not the people who just weren't good enough to work within statutory services. We're the people who are just as good as my statutory service colleagues. A few of them I can see around the room. For me, my commitment to making sure that the third sector, the voluntary community and social enterprise sector help support the 5-year forward is very recently I've been talking to Claire about the PPN network following a wonderful leadership course that I was privileged to be part of along with Joe. And one of the things that I was really struggling with was why I was basically the only voluntary sector organisation there. And speaking to Claire and saying, how do we engage people? We're going to soon be launching the voluntary sector forum within the PPN to try and get more people involved. So what we can do is not build a wall, pull walls down. We'll leave Mr. Trump to talk about walls. I think what we need to do is we need to start smashing walls, taking them down brick by brick, because I think sometimes we pull walls down and people get really frightened. So we'll take them down brick by brick, slowly, but that's what we need to do. And my commitment on behalf of the voluntary sector is to make sure that we speak to you. But I'm also asking for you to speak to us. Sometimes you're really scary, big CCGs, and I have to apologise as well. I'm not going to be able to be here all day because I've got to go and have a contract monitoring meeting with my CCG, which I'm really looking forward to. I think that we have to also recognise not just the big third sector, voluntary sector agencies, but the grassroots. We recently did a report within Greater Manchester, and I know that this has been communicated across the whole country, but a report was done recently which was called State of the Sector, and it was looking at the state of the voluntary and community sector. And what they found was that round about the 82% of organisations within Greater Manchester were what would be classed as micro organisations. They turned over less than £10,000 a year. Why aren't they round the tables? Why aren't we finding out from them what's going on? Because they're the people, and again, I was thinking about 5-year forward in the exec summary, and it talks about urgent and emergency care. We have an organisation in Manchester, and I know is doing some stuff across Greater Manchester, and I think has been rolled out across Greater Manchester, called the Sanctuary. Crisis care, a phenomenal organisation and a brilliant project. But I know how hard they battle to just get it going. I also know how many people they're preventing from turning up at A&E. Those organisations and those projects have got to be part of the conversation. They have to. And also, from day one, please, if I get asked to attend another meeting or look at another document that basically has been finished because now they want the third sector or the voluntary sector's input into it, when actually I can't do anything about it anyway because pretty much you've dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's. I'd like to be at the table and have other people at the table from day one, when we're designing, when we're actually researching before the design. I think that there's an opportunity with 5-year forward that we can really do something properly together, but it has to be together. as Jo was talking then, and she talked about 5 years, it just suddenly got me thinking, and it's something I hadn't thought about before. Is 5 years too long? I think so, but I'm not too sure. But what I'm definitely sure about is, if you really want us to be involved, I don't even know who I'm speaking to when I say us, NHS, Department of Health, if you want us to be involved within 5 years, you've got to start making sure that our funding is more than just 1 year. We have 1 year non-recurrent funding. It's become the lifeblood of the voluntary sector. I can't plan 5 years ahead. I really want to, but I can't plan 5 years ahead at the moment. And I don't know which organisation within my sector could do that other than the big 6, the big 10. The grassroots organisations can't. The small organisations such as mine, we can't do that. We really want to. And I think if we don't sort that bit out, and I know finance is often the thing that people think the voluntary and community sector is only interested in, and it's not. But there's something about, if we haven't got the money, we can't even be here. We need to think about that a little bit more. And finally, I kind of just want to say that when we start thinking about myths and stereotypes, I hear lots of things about having to deal with BME communities and the disparity in health around women. I think we also need to think wider about other myths and stereotypes. So think about men's health. I work in the field of sexual violence, and it's dominated by strategies that look at the violence against women and girls, and I'm all for that. But I'm also really concerned that we're missing out boys and men. On the 19th of November, it's International Men's Day, and despite the fact that certain politicians don't want that to happen, I think there's a thought process that says something like, if we start talking about boys and men, then that means we're ignoring girls and women, which is not the case at all. It's about having a wider view. I think we need to have a wider view. I think we need to think more about who are our populations, all of our populations, for all of our community groups, for all of our services, and actually really be in this together. Thank you very much.